Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar.
So today we're going to talk about data-driven decision making. The first thing I wanted to touch on was just some of the expectations around accounting systems and accounting finance leadership. Every year, more and more seems to be expected from accounting and finance, right? In the past, it used to be just report out financials, make sure everything ties out and good. And this continues to expand so that you need to be able to not only present the numbers, but you need to be able to explain the numbers. You also now, instead of just doing standard forecasting where here is our actuals for the first 3 months, here's the budget for the next 3, that's our forecast, you're now being asked to do what I call more advanced predictive analysis. You're asked to kind of be able to see the future a little bit. So you have to take that standard forecast, you have to be able to kind of go beyond that and have a better idea that you can report out, this is what we believe is going to happen. You're also asked to get way beyond financial metrics and get into a lot more operational metrics. Often these are things that go beyond standard core accounting data. And these are things that often are even more important to the success of the business than actual financial metrics. And then lastly, you need to be able to report this stuff, if not real time, at least what we call near time. You need to be able to give insight to leadership throughout the company in close to real time so that they can make decisions now rather than waiting for 3 months at the end of the quarter when it's too late to see what's going on and making decisions. So a lot higher expectations, people wanting a lot more information, wanting it more quickly. Let's talk about key metrics. I like to break them into 2 parts. Financial metrics, which are more traditional things, revenue, profitability, all that type of stuff. Generally speaking, financial metrics are still fine, quarterly, monthly, that works fine for people. The second part, though, is the operational metrics, and this is what we're going to kind of focus a little bit more on today. These are things that maybe aren't traditionally reported by accounting finance, but are things that really help drive day-to-day activity. And that's why they need to be close to real time. That's where I say we're going to focus a little bit more on these operational metrics today as we're going through this. All right, so when we talk about key metric reporting, the first one, determining your KPI should be a primary goal and reviewed and updated each year. It does surprise me how often we go into a client and they don't really know what their core KPIs are. Yes, revenue, yes, profitability, but each company has things that are unique to them that they should measure. And you need to know what those are and how you're going to measure those. And they should be reviewed each year and updated for those. If you're a SaaS company and churn is a big KPI for you, what are your strategies around that? What are your real true goals for churn? And what are you going to do to make sure and improve your churn to get to those numbers, for example? And then make sure everybody in this company understands each and why it's important. Why do we care about this number? What does that do for the company if we improve that or if we miss that? If you want KPIs to be meaningful for the company, explain them in language that everybody can understand. Try to have your calculations not so incredibly complex so that people can understand how you came up with those numbers. If you're going to have KPIs, they should be driven by real data, and that real data should be in your system somewhere so that you can pull it without having to manipulate it outside in a spreadsheet. And then this last one I talk about, don't get so hung up on making them perfect. It's more important, in my opinion, that your metrics are easy to explain and are consistently measured than to get those metrics exactly right. All right, so let's talk a little bit about managing the data that drives some of your KPIs. First, understand what you want to report, and then figure out where this data lives. This is one of the things, obviously, we're big fans of NetSuite, and one of the reasons I like NetSuite, because it is a suite, and if all of your systems, CRM, ERP, all your operations, everything is in NetSuite, it's a whole lot easier to do reporting because all the data is in one database. You got to decide for your metrics reporting that you're going to use for making decisions in the company, not only where does this live, but which system is going to be considered the system of record. If you really want to get into data-driven decision making and you have multiple systems, plan on putting a data warehouse in place. And then since you're using this data to do all this, you want to make sure your data is consistent and controlled. And then certainly don't use Excel as a database. Some other best practices: make sure that you understand which source system is going to be your system of record. The second one, make sure that you agree upon the reports you're going to use and who's going to develop and publish those reports. We'll come in and see, 12 different versions of the same report developed by 5 different people. Put 1 or 2 people in charge of publishing company reports. That way you get consistency, you get control over what's being published. Once you decide all this, make sure you're publishing regularly. If you say you're going to put out a certain report monthly, make sure it goes out monthly. Please don't publish 5,000 long lists of Excel spreadsheets. That's not useful for anybody. People like having charts, graphs, even pivots, anything that makes it more visual so that when people are looking at this, things pop out. It's easy to see trends, all that type of stuff. And ideally, you would put this stuff available on a dashboard. Enough talking. Let's go ahead and show you some NetSuite. Let's talk about how you can get some KPIs in the system. NetSuite has a nice KPI scorecard capability, and it's got all the standard stuff. You can have this on your home page. If you don't like some of these, they can be removed. If you have other ones, we can work with you to create those. You can see exactly what's going on in real time. Number 2, let's go ahead and pull up a typical income statement. You can report by month, for example, or maybe you want to report by class, which in this case is like product line. It's nice, you can see all the different product line stuff, but maybe you're like, well, I want to see it by product line by month. I'll come into my income section and say, in addition to grouping by account, let's also group by class. And so just like that, I was able to take my revenue accounts, break them out by class, and now I can see by class by months. You can slice and dice dozens of different ways without going to any type of outside tool or anything like that. We can create statistical accounts so it's easy to report things like revenue by employee, revenue by square foot. We often stick those right at the bottom in a new section down here that has all your KPIs based on financial and statistical accounts. All right, let's start talking about some measurements around real-time reporting. Let's use collections as an example. I wanted to show you how to maybe take that a step further to help your AR team, your collections team, maybe be more efficient. So right off the bat, here's a typical invoice is past due. We had a follow-up date, so rather than exporting this to Excel and putting all this stuff, put it in the system, and now you can have alerts for any collections follow-ups that you need to do. What if we took this a little bit further? How long did it take to pay this invoice? Based on that, now when we start to track that on a per invoice basis, we can go ahead and start run a little script in the background that goes out and looks at how long a customer typically takes to pay and put an average days to pay on the customer record. I can display that in this report. I can also put real-time alerts. If they pass that days that their average day to pay, immediately hit the account manager, immediately hit the collections team to say, hey, we might have an issue. Let's take another one and talk about item profitability. So by setting this up, all we did is now we just create a basic saved search that said, hey, find anytime we find a sales order where we did not make the margin that we expect. So you can get real-time alerts. These alerts can be in reminders in NetSuite. They can be emails. They can pop up on the screen for the sales rep. Now you're able to make decisions about, do we have an issue? Do we need to raise our prices? And you can see that in real time. All right, let's look at some little more macro stuff now. Let's say we want to start kind of keeping an eye on things like, how much are we spending with our various vendors, and how is that changing month over month? KS, we've got a number of suite apps. We've got our ERP toolkit, but it includes the ability to put pivot tables on your dashboards using saved searches. So this is just an underlying saved search of vendor bills by month, and we pivoted it. As long as we're on your home page, another thing you can do with our ERP toolkit is charting. And I can do it, go ahead and put it in a chart so I can see what's going on. I got this new customer, it looks like started up, did some nice sales, they're dropping off. Maybe I want to follow up and see if we can continue the momentum going. We could also, maybe we want to look at this as a bar and see if it's easier, tells us something a little more visually. Well, they talked about trying to be visual. This is one tool that you can use. It can use any saved search behind it and kind of visually lay it out on your dashboard so you can kind of see trends and make decisions around that. The last area we're going to talk about a little bit is using NetSuite's analytics, their Suite Analytics workbook. There's a number of pre-built workbooks that you can use. We're going to go into the procurement workbook as an example. In this one, we've got some stuff built out, so I can look at, for in this case, year-over-year monthly spend. Another one that I wanted to show is spend without PO. I see there's this one vendor has a lot of spend. All the rest is pretty small. I'm not too concerned about it, but I'm probably going to want to dig into this and say, what's going on with this tech vendor? Why are we purchasing stuff from them without a PO? Let's get that PO process in place. And here again, this is a report that you could have this published, rather than quarterly or monthly, even weekly if you wanted to. You can even put, searches in place to alert anytime a bill is created without a PO, or even not allow a bill to be entered without a PO. The nice thing with the Analytics Workbook, it actually lets you kind of start connecting things that are not connected necessarily inside of NetSuite. I created a little workbook called Sales by Cases, and it's looking at amount of sales and invoices versus the number of cases that a customer has opened. And the idea around this being I could do a little bit of analysis to see, is somebody kind of have a disparate relationship where they don't have a lot of revenue, don't have a lot of sales, but they're really hitting our support team hard. This is the one that really stands out to me. They had a lot of revenue last year with 7 cases. That's great. This year, their cases have doubled. Their revenue has dropped, by 60%. This is one I probably need to see what's going on. Well, that was my goal for today. I really wanted to start just kind of talking a little bit about metrics and why they're important and why using data rather than just gut feel or anecdotal information is important. And then I wanted to show you a few ways that you can use data inside of NetSuite, use the different tools.
Thank you all for joining us today. And if there is any questions that come up, please just be sure to reach out to us. Thank you all.